working with quadratic equation. So on the test, this is kind of the higher pieces of the algebra that you might have to deal with when it comes to your graphing. So let's go through a couple of concepts here, which might help. So we have talked about the quadratic equation itself, and I'm going to go ahead and write that out, okay? And usually what they do is they write it like this. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. So this is actually the quadratic equation. And when you're using the quadratic equation, like if they said, what is the solution set? That's actually what the question may be. They would give you, like, say, a trinomial. And the question might be, what is the solution set to this trinomial? And they might actually use that word. What they're asking you is this. They want to know, on the coordinate grid, where does this parabola, because that's what's about to get created, where does it hit the x's? And it hits the x right there, and it hits the x right there. Let's go ahead and see that. Do you see that one of the x's is at 1, 2, 3, at -4, and the other one is at 1, 2? So actually, the solution set for this would be 4, -4, and -2. And usually they write it like this. So on the test, you would actually see that, where x, do you notice they say x? Because they're referring to the x-axis. That's what they're saying. They're saying one of the x's is -4, and one of the x's is at 2. So that would actually be the solution set. And what it is where the parabola crosses the x-axis. And there's always 2, because that's the word set. So what you would do is they would give you a trinomial. Let's say like this. That is a trinomial and it has 3 terms. Let me go ahead and make it a little bit bigger for all of us to see. Okay? Now, you'll notice that the quadratic equation, it does have some constants in it, like the constant 4 in your multiplying and the constant 2. But everything else is a variable, an a or b or a c. And what I'm going to show you is where this comes from. The a, you notice it's right here? The a is coming from the term, or from the term that's being squared. Now, you'll notice that that's an x to the power of 2. But there is a term, there is a number, a coefficient in front of that x. And that x is a 1. Because remember, in front of every variable, if it's not shown, it's a 1. So the variable for the a would actually be a 1 in this equation. So if I see a, I would put the number 1. The b is actually going to be the term that just has the variable in front of it. And you'll see just the variable, and it's not being squared. It's just a 2. So anywhere I see a b, I would put a 2. The c term, whatever that single digit number is at the end, that would be your c term. Now, one thing to take notice is that that's not a positive 8. Now it's a negative 8. So your c term would be -8. So how you would fill in the quadratic equation is everywhere you see an a, you put a 1. Everywhere you see a b, you put a 2. Everywhere you see a c, you put a -8. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this for you, okay? So on previous examples, or if you actually look back at one of my other videos, I actually go through solving the quadratic equation. And I think you should take a look at that, because I don't want to go through it here. All I want to do is point out points or issues with the parabola itself, not how to solve the quadratic. But what I will do is go ahead and rewrite this for you. So let's go ahead and put x equals. Now, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. So opposite of b, which is a 2, plus and minus the square root of b squared, which is 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is a 1, and c, which is a negative 8. I'm going to divide all of that by 2 times the a, which is a 1. Now, you would use the order operation to solve this. At the end, you would split and then solve. So one of them is going to be a negative 2 plus whatever's underneath that thing. The other one's going to be a negative 2 minus whatever's underneath that thing. And again, you would want to look back at my playlist and find the quadratic equation and watch that video. Okay, that actually goes through how to go through the order of operation and solving this. But again, I want to go through just the ideas and the vocabulary. Okay, so one of the other things about this is that's how you would find the solution set. One of the other questions that might be asked about the quadratic equation is about its maximum or minimum. Now, what that's talking about is they want to know how either high it's going, or on this case, how low it's going. And low you would call your minimum. High you would call your maximum. Now, let me show you how to do that. It's actually only part of the quadratic equation. If you'll notice, look at what it is. You can use this piece, just this piece, to solve. Do you notice that it's just the b and the a? And it's only the first part of the quadratic equation, right? The opposite of b. And then you divide it by what's on the denominator, 2 times a. Let's go ahead and fill it in with the numbers that we already have. So we have a b of 2. So I'm going to put x equals the opposite of 2 divided by 2 times 1. Let's solve. Negative 2 times 2. 2 divided by 2, that is a negative 1. So that means that my x is at negative 1. Is it? Let's see. If I go over there and I find my negative 1, and I look down, yes, look, its lowest point is at x equals negative 1. So that is where my minimum is located. Okay, that's what you do. So most of this is actually pretty easy, or not easy, but it is detailed. Okay, I do want to show you one more thing, which actually can be pretty simple. Okay, and it's when you're looking for, if they say, where does the thing cross the y? And you'll notice that with a parabola intercepts the y at this point here. Do you see that? And you would say, well, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, negative 8. You would say it crosses the y. But look, let me show you something else. Do you notice if you look back at your original equation of the trinomial, do you notice that the negative 8 is actually located right there? Now, when you do your linear graphing, we always say that constant back there, that is, right, y, remember our linear y equals mx plus b? That part right there is actually the y-intercept. Well, this part is actually the y-intercept for the trinomial, for the quadratic. And it would say, well, the y-intercept is at negative 8. Isn't that interesting? That's really cool. Another thing that we can do is you can tell whether the parabola is either going to be facing up or facing down. And you can do that based just on if the a term is positive or negative. If that a term, which is the term that's being squared, if it's a positive, it means that the parabola is going to be facing up. If that a term is a negative, it means that parabola is going to be facing down. And that's pretty simple. So those are the basics of the parabola and how to solve and what they're looking for. If you want more detailed information, you can actually go and look for it and find more specific information. But as far as the GED test is concerned, the solution set is probably the most that might be asked. I actually have seen where they said the maximum and minimum. But again, this is more of that fancy upper level information. You can still pass the test without knowing all of this stuff. Okay.